He already saved the world, and got betrayed for it. They crowned a fake hero, tried to erase the real one, and moved on like nothing happened. So he came back from the dead and chose the most dangerous path of all, farming. No throne, no revenge arc, no royal drama, just rebuilding a village and feeding goats. He would rather fix a barn than overthrow a government. Because when a former hero just wants peace, everyone else somehow loses their mind. Let's go. The story begins at the moment when MC thought that the battle between the demon lord and humanity would finally end soon, because the hero chosen by the goddess appeared. The girls called his name and said that they were at the limit of their strength. They needed to retreat. He couldn't die. He turned to them and said that they could leave the rest to him. The girl heard this and used a teleportation spell. He remained in the same place and loudly told the demon lord that now they needed to end this once and for all. He created a bright flash when he loudly asked the goddess to lend him her protection. After that, he found himself in a dark space, used a light spell, and was very surprised when he saw a skeleton nearby and wondered if he was really underground. It would be nice to get out of here before he died alive. He used a teleportation spell and moved to the field. He looked around and thought that everything was destroyed, which meant the demon lord's power and the castle were connected. It was dangerous. He took off his helmet and said that he had finally defeated the demon lord. He had to give credit to the goddess for protecting him. Suddenly, energy erupted from his sword and a goddess appeared before him. She named him Noel and said that she was glad that he was alive. Her powers did not extend to the demon lord's lands, so while he was unconscious, she could not even guess whether he was alive. She was worried because he had been unconscious for half a year. He was very surprised by what he heard and said loudly that this could not be. He remembered something and asked loudly if his comrades were okay. She said that his friends were fine. He was glad about this and thanked the goddess. She touched his face, called his name, and said that, however, the same cannot be said about his world. His kingdom, Lavania, declared that the hero who defeated the demon lord is Prince Cain Lavania. He was a little confused by this and said that, however, everyone from their squad had returned. It was somehow strange. She said that his friends were pretending as if he had never existed by royal order. Ina became a court mage. Knight Gudall became a military commander. In the capital, he received a mansion and a harem. Saint Stella was engaged to the false hero Cain. In exchange for these respected positions, he said loudly that in exchange didn't sound quite right. These were rewards, weren't they? Wait, she was engaged? She agreed, and he wondered, when did she have time? This is very unexpected. After all, he has known her since childhood. She said that she wanted to tell him the reason for the imperial order. The goddess said that the hero who defeated the demon lord is their hope. However, if he dies, the people of their kingdom, even all of humanity, will be engulfed in unrest. The banner of hope, the hero, exists, giving hope to the exhausted people. He listened to this and asked, so they found a replacement? He understands these intentions, the desire to remain calm. He took his sword and said loudly that, however, he is alive. She said that, however, even if he returns to the kingdom, the hero's true identity will remain a secret. He remembered that he had been wearing a helmet all the time, covering his face, and she said that it was kept secret so that the demon lord would not return or according to the king's intentions. However, she never thought it would come to this. There is something strange about this. The king has long been suspicious. She still does not trust him, so she's dealing with it. He remembered the past when the king said that it was amazing that the hero comes from his kingdom. He hoped that they will continue to use their duties. He thought that the difficult path had begun for the sake of protecting the people and their country. However, what would happen without him? Everything he fought for. The goddess asked what he was going to do now. He said that, to be honest, he didn't even know. At least until he calms down, he wants to live a quiet life. He changed his clothes, started packing his things, and thought, well, first, he needs to go home and think about the future. The goddess said that she was grateful to him for saving this world and wished him luck and blessings. After that, the protagonist returned to the city, came to the tavern, and the merchant asked, he came from far away, right? He should eat well. He looked to the side and noticed a picture with the inscription, they are congratulating Saint Stella on her pregnancy. He asked, what is it? The man said it was a news report. His wife embellished it a little. The saint is pregnant? Isn't that a miracle? The whole town is rejoicing. After that, he went into the forest and thought, it's clear she's going to become a mother. Since everyone thinks he doesn't exist, he won't even be able to congratulate her. He noticed a very strong explosion in his path and asked loudly, what was that? He quickly ran there and thought the explosion was coming from the village. What happened there? Running further, he noticed a hydra and a woman who was fighting against this monster. She didn't have the strength to fight back this monster, and she closed her eyes in despair. She opened her eyes slightly and asked, is she still alive? He ran up to her, blocked the monster's attack with magic, and asked, is she okay? He very quickly defeated this monster with his sword, and the girl said that it was amazing. He alone defeated the hydra. He asked, she looks battered. Is she hurt? She denied it, thanked him for saving her, and said that everything is fine. He examined her clothes and asked, is this a slave collar, right? She agreed and said that she is a battle slave. She was given a task to make sure that she does not escape without completing it. A slave collar was put on her. He said that then they should take it off. She was very surprised by this, was about to say something, but he immediately created a magic circle in front of her and destroyed this collar with a spell. She was surprised by this and said that, however, it was a special collar. It cannot be destroyed by anyone except the leader. He asked, she also has a slave seal, right? He will remove that too. She took off her clothes to reveal the slave seal, and she said that it looks pretty strong. She said that her seal is unique. She won't be able to remove this even if she gathers all the magicians in the country. At least that's what she was told. He pointed his hand at her, used the skill, and began to destroy this seal. She looked at herself with a surprised expression and said that it was gone. She can't believe it. Is she really free? She began to cry with joy, thanked him, and said that she would owe him. MC asked what her name was. She said that for sure, she still doesn't know his name. Her name is Sarah. He also introduced himself and said that he was glad to meet her. She reciprocated. Then they began to leave, and he said that he didn't think that they had to go in the same direction. She thanked him for the clothes, and he said that he apologized for the fact that she had to wear his clothes. He will give her women's clothes when they return to the city. She said that, however, this is impossible. It is a ghost town now. He was surprised by what he heard, and when they reached city, he saw ruined buildings. She said that she heard that this city was attacked by demons. It seems that after that, the kingdom fenced off this entire area. They went further, and he said that this is his house. She is his first guest in such a long time. It would be nice to clean up here. He raised his hands and used the skills of transformation and purification. He restored the house, which greatly surprised her. They sat down at the table, and he asked what her mission was, the one for which she came to the village. She was about to say something, thinking about what to say, and he asked if it was difficult for her to talk about it. She denied it and said that it seemed worth telling him about it. She came here to carry out the king's orders. She must erase all traces of his existence. He was surprised by what he heard and asked why the king needed this. She said that she did not know that either. Noel asked, so she was the king's slave? She denied it, and said that her owner was someone who did many good deeds during the time of the enslavement of demons, although he was not a very pleasant person. He was again surprised by what he heard, and asked his name. He was surprised when Sarah said that his name was Gudall. Did he know him? He agreed, and she said that he and the hero, or rather the prince, were both disgusting. They said that even if they had to completely erase the city in order to remove his traces, it was worth it. It was a ghost town. There should be no difficulties, despite the fact that they were a hero and a knight. He called her by name and said that he was the hero. He defeated the demon lord. The king arranged everything to look like Cain defeated the demon lord. She was surprised by this and asked, is he a hero? He asked, is it hard to believe, isn't it? She denied it and said that she understood everything. The king gave the order to erase the traces of a real hero. Moreover, he was very strong then. She believes him. She was about to say something, but was embarrassed by the fact that her stomach began to rumble. He laughed and asked if she was hungry. He would cook something. She immediately got up from the table and said loudly that she would help. They went outside, and she said with surprise that there was not even water here. He said it was strange. This land is protected by the goddess of the earth, so it is impossible for the well to dry up. She listened and said that the water was not even heard. The protagonist, with a thoughtful look, said that they needed to check the Hokora. They came to the right place, and she said that these are seals used by a demon. This contains such power that they can bind a god or a spirit, not to mention the fact that only the demon himself can remove it. He asked, are these parting gifts after the attack? He began to remove these seals with a calm expression and said that they need to get this out of here. When he removed all the talismans, water began to fly out of this well. Spirit appeared and said that she had returned. She called him a hero and said that she was grateful to him for removing the seals. He was surprised by this and asked if she knew him. She agreed and asked who else could remove the seals. She also felt the protection of the goddess on him. He said with a small smile that he already thought that no one would be able to see him as a hero. She jumped off the well and said that she was the goddess of the earth and not so sleepy as not to notice it just because of the restriction of the seal. Sarah looked at her height and asked if she was really the goddess of the earth. She said in a slightly dissatisfied tone that she was not that small. She was very surprised when she saw her, jumped on him and loudly called her a demon. He said that everything was fine. She was a good demon. She was still nervous about this, and she asked with a little surprise, so he knew that she was a demon? He agreed, and she asked, did he save her even despite this? MC said that she was in danger, no matter who she was, a human or a demon. The goddess said that everything was fine then. Now she asked to be allowed to introduce herself. Her name was Aqua, goddess of the earth of their friendly and amazing district. The others introduced themselves as well. Her stomach growled, and she said she was hungry. He laughed and said that it seemed even gods get hungry. He offered to cook something. She could summon water, right? She agreed, after which they went to his house. He began to cook food and said that he hoped they would like it. Sarah said that she apologized for not being able to help with anything except hunting. However, she did have an idea of how to hold a knife. He said that she didn't need to worry about it. Aqua picked up a plant with a fork and asked if it was a weed. He denied it and said it was a wild grass. It was edible. Sarah began to eat and said that it was very tasty. She looked at her and said that it seemed even demons did not understand food. She finally decided to try the food and was surprised to hear it was amazing. What kind of miracle was this? And how could this herb be so delicious? She asked if this was one of the hero's abilities too. He said it wasn't magic or a heroic ability. They finished eating, thanked him, and he said he'd been thinking about everything a lot since he'd calmed down. These shabby buildings, empty streets, the entire village was blocked off after the attack. Sarah said she'd heard the villagers had left. Aqua said she was glad they were safe, but she still hoped they'd return. He turned to her and said it was unlikely after they'd moved. She sighed with displeasure and said the goddess of the earth was very lonely without people. He couldn't say that. He patted her on the head, which confused her, and she asked what he was doing. Noel said he'd returned. This was his hometown, and he'd stay here. She asked if he would really live an ordinary village life, even though he was a hero. He said it wasn't exactly an ordinary life. He was someone who could work for 100 people. It would be cool if the village came back to life again, wouldn't it? Sarah raised her hand and said that she would help too. He called Aqua and said that he would look forward to it. She said, with a happy expression, that he could rely on her. After all, she was the friendly goddess of the land of this county. He said that first they needed to do something about the fields. Aqua agreed and said that they would plant vegetables on this dead soil. She raised her hands above her head and called for a large amount of water. They began to be surprised by this, and she happily said that the vegetables were sprouting one after another. He said that seedlings don't grow that fast. She laughed, pointed to the sprout, and asked loudly, "Then what is this?" They were both surprised by this and said that it was already sprouting. It was lovely. She said with a smug look that they should not be shy and adore her. However, this was not all done by her alone. The other gods of the earth also helped her, because everyone wants to help a hero. He said that, however, he was still a former hero. She said that former or current, it didn't matter because they wanted to help him. She, of course, was no exception. He thanked them, and she said that they should make the village the same as it was. He agreed and said that they would make this village the best. They agreed and asked if they could pick weeds for breakfast. He was very sloppy. It was wild grass. Later he found a sheep, hung its collar, and said that he never thought he would find it. It was wonderful. Aqua was walking nearby, called out to him loudly, and said that she thought there was a goat there, and they would have milk every day. They walked further, and he noticed a girl lying on the ground. He approached her and loudly asked if she was okay. Having received no answer, he used healing magic and said that she still hadn't woken up. He picked her up and thought, alas, it didn't help. Apparently he'll have to take her home. Sometime later, in the house, the girl woke up, sat up, and asked where she was. He turned to her and asked, "Is she awake?" Aqua entered the room and said with surprise that she had finally woken up. She drank some water, and he said that she hadn't opened her eyes. He thought she was sick. She said that so much had happened to her. She was resting in a village nearby. She hadn't opened the window for a long time, and the air was so clean. For some reason, she was very delighted, so she went for a walk. She tripped and hit her head hard on a tree. It seemed like she hadn't eaten or drunk in forever, so she was still very hungry. The protagonist said that he understood. They would cook something. Perhaps removing the seals from Aqua affected the atmosphere and made it much cleaner. She said that water had only recently flowed into the dead soil. Most likely that played a role. The girl said her name was Sonia. She was grateful for saving her. After that, they went outside and collected goat's milk. He stood nearby and said that she seemed like a good girl. She had found common ground with Aqua. Sarah, looking a little worried, agreed. He looked at her and asked, "Is something wrong?" She said that she was worried about Gudall. If she didn't come back, someone else might go looking. She was about to say something about this village, and he slapped her on the back and said that they would think of something later. Sonia finished collecting milk, called out to him. He turned around and thanked her. They drank it, and Aqua came up to her and said that she should hurry. It was a race to the river. He turned to her and said that she shouldn't push her because she was still recovering. She said with a slightly sad look that even though she seemed to be recovering, her emotional wounds still remained within her. She was worried about this and said that she could talk to her. She was about to cry, decided to speak out, and said that her fiancé broke off their engagement. Everyone in the capital was talking about it. She couldn't take it anymore and ran away. They approached her and said that she should stop crying. You couldn't find a worse guy. He was probably just blind. She calmed down and said that she was sorry for not holding back her emotions. She felt better after pouring out her soul. Aqua asked if her fiancé was some famous person. She agreed and said that they seemed to know him. After all, he was a hero who defeated the demon lord. The girls immediately looked at him and she said with a wide smile that he shouldn't make such an expression. He knew that it looked unconvincing. MC asked if her fiancé was Prince Cain by any chance. She agreed and said that it was him. He got engaged to the saint he was with when he defeated the demon lord. Now they will have a child. She didn't even have time to hold his hand. She started crying again, and they told her that she should stop crying. He is just an enemy of women. It is definitely not her fault in this situation. Exactly, she is very sweet. He said that, however, of all people, it was the lying hero who was her fiancé. This caught her attention. He told the whole story and she asked, So he is not the real hero? Aqua said that the real hero is now next to her. She was very surprised and asked what she said. He said that it is hard to understand everything at once. Sonia denied it and said that since the goddess herself said it, she couldn't help but believe her. This is a beautiful village. Can she stay here? A true hero doesn't boast about his achievements and lives a modest life. She was deeply touched. Noel said that he returned to his hometown, but the important thing was whether she could make this decision herself. Will her family not worry? She said that she didn't know if they would worry, but she would ask them for permission. He said that they would gladly accept her. Later, Sarah changed her clothes and asked how they liked it. Aqua said that it looked cool. Sonia said that she was a woman, so she deserved to look good too. She thanked her, and he asked who would have thought that she had such talent. She said that sewing was considered good manners for women, so she learned it. She will try to help everyone in the village. He said that she looked a little better compared to when she first woke up. She looked at him with a joyful smile and agreed. A little later, the knight came to the forest and found the body of the killed Hydra lying on the ground. After that, he came to the village, saw the protagonist, and said that the village should be empty. However, it began to develop again. He turned around at the voice and called him Gerzus. He was very surprised when he saw him and loudly asked what he was doing here. They entered the house and he said that the daughter of the commander of the knightly order was missing and he must find her. Sonia caught his attention. He called her and she said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He loudly asked, had she been here all this time? Just so she knew, the entire mansion was engulfed in chaos. She agreed with a worried look and said that she was very sorry. He approached her and said that he thought that her family held a high position. After all, she was the prince's bride, so she was the commander's daughter. She agreed and said that her father was Gusher Almaty. Aqua stood nearby and asked, Commander, is that an important title? He agreed and said that he was the most important person in the army. Gerzus said that everyone was worried about her and that they should go back. Sonia said that she didn't want to, that now she wanted to stay and help here. He was very surprised by what he heard, went up to him and asked loudly, what does this even mean? MC said that they had discussed it and that first she needed her family's permission. Sarah entered the room and announced her return. He turned to her and said that she looked pleased. And that's true. She had caught a big catch today. After that, he and the knight walked down the street and he said that he still fondly remembered the times when they went on adventures together. Is he in the army now? Gerzus agreed and said that his new boss had given him a task and he had come here to fulfill it. He had heard that Miss had been seen in a nearby village, but when he had arrived there, he had been greeted with a commotion. He said that at first he had been worried about her, despite the task. That was just like him. He looked at him and asked, does he think he himself has changed? He protects a lost girl, not only Miss, but also a demon girl. It's a very hesitant job, but he still has a goal. He took his sword and Noel asked, what's the matter? He said that this girl is a battle slave who was given a task. Why is she living with him? He said that circumstances just worked out that way. He pointed the sword at him and said that his goal was to make sure of her work. The situation could get worse depending on his answer. He said with a calm look that he knew about her goal and the circumstances. That's why he decided to protect her. He said that his superior was on a team with the hero who killed the demon lord. He is the one who became one of the best in the army in an instant. He is so strong that he can claim the place of commander-in-chief of the knightly order. If the task he gave is not completed, the situation could become dire. The protagonist, with a serious expression, said that he is ready for it. Gerzus asked with slight surprise, even if an entire army was against him. Having received a positive answer, he stepped back, getting ready to fight. Still, he sighed, lowered his sword, and said that he understood why he was willing to support the demon girl. However, did he know that she was a battle slave with a collar? He calmly said that he had taken it off. He was very surprised by what he heard and asked loudly, could he really take it off? He calmly said that he was a hero, so it really was true. After that, they returned home. He showed his armor and asked, so he really was a hero? He stood next to him and asked if he believed him. He said that he knew one thing for sure. The person who took off the collar cannot be an ordinary citizen. He said that, however, now he was just a villager. Gerzus agreed and asked, however, what is a real hero doing here? He listened to his story, became very angry about it, and loudly said that they were freaks. He assumed that entrusting the destruction of the village to a demon girl was strange, but he didn't think there was such a secret behind it. MC called him and said that he would like to ask him for a favor. Later, Sarah asked if Sonia was returning to the mansion. He agreed and said that he wanted to explain the whole situation to everyone briefly. She asked who was with her. He said his name and said that it was his old friend from his time as a researcher. He came here to find her. He offered to help her and she thanked him. Aqua took the hem of his clothes and asked when she would be back. He turned to her and said that once she received the commander's permission, it might take some time. She asked if this knight would go with her. He denied it and said that he had a task. Sometime later, Gerzus returned to the city, came to the building and said that this research had already been mentioned before. However, this battle slave was injured by a hydra and died. Gudall, with a displeased expression, said how useless she was. He had been told that she was one of the best in the demon lord's army. He said that the area was difficult to access because of the hydra. However, he managed to find it. It was the best he could do. He placed the slave collar on his desk and said that with his permission, he would leave. He closed the door behind him, and he looked at it and thought that he had not managed to completely remove Noel's traces. However, as long as the Hydra was there, no one would go there. Later, Sarah asked, "Did he say the collar?" He agreed and said that he asked Gerzus to use her collar to prove that she was dead. Gudall would no longer look for him. Now she was free. She thanked him with a smile and said that she was also grateful to his friend and expressed her gratitude. Aqua stood nearby and said that she hoped Sonia would return soon. It looked like she was going to bake a cake. Later, she asked loudly, "Is the oven not working?" He agreed and said that it looked intact from the outside, but it was powered by magic, and there was nothing inside. "You can't just fix magical parts," she asked in a frustrated voice. "Can't he fix it at all?" He thought about it and said that he could try. She started asking him to fix it, and he agreed to try. Gerzus entered their room and asked what they were doing there. He turned to him, thanked him, and said that he had helped them a lot about Gudall. He said that there was no need for thanks, since he was the one who asked for it. Also, does he remember the one who became the court mage after defeating the demon lord? The protagonist agreed and asked, "Is he talking about Ina?" He said that he heard that she was locked up. He was surprised by what he heard and asked, "Such a proud girl was locked up?" Later, Sonia came to the flower meadow to pick flowers and noticed Ina standing near the cemetery. She greeted her and asked if she knew anyone from this village. She denied it and said that an old friend of hers lived there, but he died while on a mission. She said that they could go to her place. She would make tea. After all, she was new here. They both entered the house, and she said with a happy look that she had returned. MC and Aqua turned to her, were about to greet her, but he was very surprised when he saw her. She was very surprised when she saw him, dropped the flowers, and with tears on her face, said that so he was alive. She knelt in front of him and said loudly that she was very sorry for betraying him. He asked her to raise her head and asked if it was because of that false hero. She said that the king convinced them that this was necessary to keep the hope of the villagers alive. Aqua approached her and asked if she'd received the status of court mage in exchange. Correct? He patted her head and said she'd done a good job in the enslavement squad, so it wasn't surprising, and she shouldn't tease her. Ina looked at him and said that even in the squad, it was mostly his powers that did the work. In fact, it was he who had defeated the demon lord. He invited her to sit at the table and asked what had happened to her. Before, she was very confident, even forcing him to cook. Also, why did she return to confinement? A court mage should be a mentor, shouldn't she? She was surprised by what she heard and asked loudly, "How did he know?" She lowered her head and said that with her abilities, she thought she could handle the job of a mage. However, earlier, she asked loudly, "Can't she use combat magic?" The mage said that after the death of the demon lord, everyday magic became more and more popular. They tirelessly trained it for the sake of the people. She can handle it, right? She was so used to combat magic. Currently, she said in a sad tone that she was useless. For the sake of enslavement, she only studied combat magic and completely forgot about everyday magic. Everyday magic was required from court mages. She stayed in the house alone and studied, but then realized that she had no ability for it. He asked, "Is that why she ran away from there and came here?" She said with a serious expression that, moreover, there was something she had to say. The false hero's plan was concocted from the very beginning. He was surprised by this and asked what she meant. She said that after enslaving the demon lord, the hero was planned to be killed. At least, that was how it was initially. She thought it was all for the sake of making the prince a hero. He stood up from the table and asked if she knew this from the very beginning. She said that she only learned about it recently. There is information that only they, the court magicians, have. A confidential document was hidden there. He asked if carelessly returning to the capital wasn't such a bad idea, right? Ina said that she came here to apologize to him. However, before she learned of this plan, she did everything only for herself. She knew nothing about him, the real hero. That's why she wanted to at least make a grave and put flowers there. She needs to express much more gratitude to him. She apologizes. She is very sorry. After that, they came to the village, and Noel said that there were still a lot of ruins in the village. If she wanted to atone, she had to restore it all. She was surprised by this and was about to say something loudly. She didn't have time to finish because he pointed his hand at the nearest house and restored it with magic. She looked at it in surprise and thought that it was amazing. Even among the court magicians, not everyone was capable of this. She wanted to say something about it, and he said that he would teach her. For now, she could stay in his house. She started crying with joy and thanked him. Aqua came up to him, tugged at the hem of his clothes, and said that they actually needed to fix something else. He remembered this, called her and said that he was asking her to help him. After some time, Sonia took the baking sheet with food out of the oven and said that everything seemed to be well cooked. She stood next to her and said that it must be very tasty. Sarah entered the room and asked what that sweet smell was. She called Aqua and said that she was asking her to call everyone else. It was time for tea. Sometime later, the protagonist was standing in the forest. Gusher attacked him and loudly said that he would now test his determination. He blocked his attack, and Sonia saw this, loudly called for her dad, and ran towards them. Gusher grabbed her hand and loudly said that she should wait. She turned to him and was about to loudly ask about what was happening, and he said that something led to this. Earlier, when her father galloped into the village, he said that he was grateful to him for saving his daughter. He really is very grateful. He said that there was no need to thank him, because he did nothing special. Moreover, she helps in the village. He was surprised by what he heard and loudly asked, "Is he making her work?" He calmly agreed and said that they were short of workers and she helps them out a lot. He got angry and asked, "So he wants her to stay just to use her?" He said in a calm tone that, however, she herself asked to stay. He slammed his hand on the table and said that they should unwind a bit. He should not forget to take his sword. Gusher became worried about this and loudly called the commander, and he said with a serious expression that if he had something to say, he should do it using a sword. This is according to the rules of the knightly order. At the present time, Gusher said that he understood, so everything is as he said earlier. Now he must use his skill and deliver the first blow with the sword granted by his majesty. MC got into a fighting stance and said that if this is really so, he did not finish the sentence, ran past incredibly quickly, and with one blow broke the sword in his hands. He asked him for forgiveness and said that he did his best. After that, they returned home, and he said that he could not have imagined that the one who could strike him down with a sword would end up in a half-empty village. If he was so skilled with a sword, he would have admirers in every country. But why then did he live in such a remote place? He said with a slightly confused look that a lot had happened, and it seemed he had found what he wanted to do right here. Gusher took a fork with food and said that it was a waste of time. If he had been a little more prudent, he would have initiated him into an order of knights. He said that he was grateful to him for such words. He was very surprised when he tried this dish and said loudly that it was amazing. Were all the vegetables grown in this village? He closed his eyes and thought about the freshness spreading across the tongue and awakening the appetite. The nourishing sweetness also gave strength to wounded soldiers. He said that it was tastier than anything they had eaten in the capital. From now on, the main reason to visit this village is the incredibly delicious food. Sonia brought another dish and said that the water here is also good. For this, they are grateful to the goddess of the earth, Aqua. He looked at what she brought and asked what it was. She said it was a meat pie. She made it herself and really wanted him to try it. He asked, was this her doing too? She said that she learned it a long time ago. Her mother and maids taught her. She wanted him to try it for his birthday. However, he never came home these days, so she never got a chance to show it to him. Gusher called her and said that, as the head of the army, the commander endured many hardships in order to protect their country. She said that she knew this. She was no longer a child. Noel said that his job is sometimes even more important than his family. All this is important. His job is to protect the country, to protect its future. Therefore, this is also important. Gusher tried the pie she made and said that it was amazing. He apologized for making her feel lonely. However, now he intends to stay with his family. Will she make him meat pies? She called out to her dad in surprise. Gusher turned to him and was about to ask something. He agreed and said that he was ordered to hand over his powers to Gudall, but he was still unsure of him. He tried to delay this moment, but it seemed the time had come. He loudly called out to the commander and said that if this freak commanded the army, then their country would end. Gusher turned to him and said that he also had a strong feeling that he was not the one who should protect the country. However, he could not go against the king's orders simply because he felt so. The protagonist decided to tell him about what happened, and he asked in surprise if he was really that disgusting. Just think, he was a real hero. Gusher said that it was obvious, the way he manipulated words with a sword, the style of a knightly order. However, he did not ask him to be so eloquent as to break his word given to his family heirloom. He looked worried and said he was very sorry and he would make it up to him one day. Gusher said that if it was true, he couldn't entrust his responsibilities to him. Later, Sarah entered the room and asked if he had finished talking to her father. Sonia agreed and said that it seemed like her father had approved of him. She looked at her and asked if she hadn't been worried about it. She said with a serious expression that they had fought in earnest. Her father was so talented that he had risen to the very top only thanks to his skill with a sword. Even if he was a hero, if he had suffered. Sarah laughed and said that even to touch the Hydra, the knightly order needed 2 squads. She believed that there was such a person who could seriously injure the one who had single-handedly defeated this monster. At the same time, Gusher looked at the lush field and said that he found it hard to believe that this village was empty recently. MC stood next to him and said that it was all thanks to their joint efforts. He turned to him and asked if the others also decided to stay in the village because he was here. He said that he just wanted to make the village peaceful so that everyone could live here. Even if they lost their home, they could always come here. He said he thought it was a waste of energy for a hero like him to use it on a small village. However, he was only envious of his ambitions. Then, to protect his youthful dreams, he should also stretch his bones a little. Later, they returned to the house, and he said that she could return home at any time. Sonia said that if he wanted to eat some pie, he could come to their village. He asked if she could make pie at home, right? She happily said that she had other people she wanted to let try it. He shook Noel's hand and said that he was asking him to take care of his daughter. He was a little confused by this and agreed. Then he and Garza's went to the horses, and he said that this guy had good intentions. He agreed, and Gusher said that he had never seen such a reliable person. After some time, Stella brought the prince tea and Cain thanked her for it. He said that the mansion where they would live was almost finished. She asked with a happy expression, "Is this true?" She was so happy about it. He said that her smile could make anyone hurry. Her fresh black tea was the best. Gudall entered the office and said loudly in a displeased tone that this was an idiot. He calmly looked at him and asked what had happened. He looked irritated. He said loudly that he had again delayed the transfer of the commander's powers. He was ignoring the king's order and deliberately delaying. Or was he doing this because he was the father of his ex-fiancée? He became indignant because of this and loudly said that it was not so. He said with displeasure that then he should simply refuse him. Cain asked him not to escalate and said that the commander was respected and loved by all subordinates. If they pressed, the knights would resist. He asked loudly, however, could he not be suppressed by the king's order? How can he get him out of the way? Stella called out to him loudly and said that he should stop blaming the prince. He turned to her, skied with displeasure, and said that then she should tell him what to do. She asked, Commander Gusher is closely connected with the knightly order, right? The prince said that the order is like family to him. He usually says so in public. She said that this is such an amazing statement. However, what is more important when it comes to family? He has a lonely daughter. If he has to choose between Sonia and the order, I wonder if he will be able to continue to hold his post. After some time, at night, a squad of hired killers came to the village, and one of them said that if anyone interferes, they must kill everyone. He heard some sound, grabbed his sword and asked loudly, "Who is there?" Jerzas came out from behind a tree and asked, "Isn't this his position?" The killer looked at him and said loudly that he is alone, they must kill him. He heard a sound again, turned around and called out loudly for his comrades. He was very surprised when he saw that they were all unconscious. He was attacked by magic and screamed loudly in pain. The one who attacked was Ina. He approached her and said that as expected of a member of the Demon King capture team. She said that she was lenient this time and tried not to kill him. Sarah came to them and said that everything was clear. He saw that she brought several unconscious bodies of the killers and asked if she killed them all. She said that it was Noel's doing. She didn't even have a chance to fight. He said that this is his style. Where is he now? She said that he went to the goat pen because it was time to feed them. At the same time, he called Aqua, thanked her, and said that thanks to her, he was able to defeat them. She laughed and asked who he thinks blessed this village. It's all because she really doesn't like bad intentions. That's to be expected from her. Even a god couldn't say that, even though she's already a goddess. Sonia approached her and said that thanks to her, they would be able to remember them. After some time, Gerzas looked at the killers and said that regarding their intentions, it would be nice if he turned out to be a good boy and told everything himself. Ina said that she didn't think it would be easy. He said that she could leave it to him. The leader of the killers came to his senses. He approached him and asked, "Will he now tell me what his task in the village is?" He remained silent, which is why he slammed his fist into his palm and asked, "Does he choose to remain silent?" Apparently, they'll have to resort to more severe methods. She began to emit powerful energy, offered to help, and said that they would see how many lightning strikes he could withstand. The leader of the killers was very surprised when he saw her and loudly asked why she was here. She asked in surprise, "So who is he?" He said it was such an honor that she asked his name. Born into an elite family, she was of great help to the heroes of the Demon King subjugation squad. Unlike her comrades, she didn't boast about her achievements and didn't like to show off in public. Her noble and unblemished will proves that she is the coolest. Jerzas looked at him and asked, "Isn't she just an ordinary introvert?" He asked loudly, "Is she also imprisoned in this village?" She asked in a displeased tone. "Does it look like she's imprisoned?" She asked. "Who is he? Will he tell them why he is imprisoned here?" He said loudly, "They are here for the commander's daughter." Sonia was surprised by this and asked, "However, why did they come for me if she is here of her own free will?" He said loudly in a confused tone, "It is because she was brainwashed." She said that, however, she had received her father's permission. The protagonist stood nearby and said that he would like to listen to them. It seems they do not understand each other. After that, they came to the house, and he said that they should talk everything over. The guy said that the task they received was to save Sonia, who was heartbroken and brainwashed. They had to take her to a place where she could forget it like a bad dream. They learned of her location from the nearest village. He asked with a thoughtful look, "So their goal is to take her, but why would someone give such an order?" The guy said that he did not know that. Jerzas approached him and asked what they should do. Perhaps reinforcements would come next. At the very least, they needed to find out who was behind all this. MC looked at him and said that he shouldn't worry about it so much. Whoever it was, they could try hundreds of times. If they dared to harm anyone here, they would pay dearly. These words touched them, and they said that it seemed he was the only one who believed in this. Maybe they could find a more effective way. A young man and a girl entered the room, and he said that he proposed getting rid of the root cause of their problems. That was the work of a hero. The protagonist asked them why they were both there. Mitraj, the Holy Queen, ruler of the Holy Nation, told him they were not bad people. They had come from far away. Could she have some tea first? After a while, when the guests were seated at the table, Mitraj apologized for their sudden arrival. The girl thanked Sonia for the tea. When she saw how much sugar Mitraj put in the drink, she was very surprised. The Holy Queen replied that everything was fine. She liked sweets. Schwartz, as always, remarked, had a sweet tooth. Gurdza said, turning to the guests, "Now, let them tell us who they are." Schwartz apologized to him and said he was the third prince of the kingdom of Schwier. His name was Schwartz Schwier. The knight remarked in surprise, "Wasn't that kingdom nearby? Why did their majesty need to come here?" The prince replied that he was here to meet Noel in person, to meet the true hero who had defeated the Demon King. The protagonist looked at him with a slight surprise and asked what he meant. Schwartz replied that it was a long story. First, the backstory of this attack should be explained. After the prince's story, MC said irritably, "Gudall again." Schwartz continued, saying that, in short, Commander Garsh was resigning, the problem solved. What Gudall wanted was the title of commander. Gurzas interrupted the prince's speech and exclaimed that if that was the reason, the army would be in disarray. Wasn't the purpose of his proposal to drain their army of its strength? The prince replied, "Of course not. He certainly had no such intentions." He assured him of that. The knight thought that, judging by Schwartz's reputation as the king's right-hand man, rightfully considered the most nimble and cunning courtier, his arrival was controversial. He said aloud that for a man like him to come to the village simply to see Noel sounded somewhat unconvincing. What did he really want? Schwartz looked closely at the perceptive Gersas. Mitraj decided to intervene in the conversation and said that it was normal to have some suspicions, but the prince was not as evil as they thought. Schwartz, sipping tea, told the protagonist that he was very pleased to meet him. A multi-year operation to subjugate the Demon King. A great honor to meet a hero who accomplished such a feat of arms. Such a hero should be celebrated with a hymn as a savior, but his merits have been forgotten, and even his life is in danger. The nobility of this kingdom should be ashamed. He asks him to show him how skillfully he wields a sword. He wants to see it with his own eyes. Mitraj covered the prince's mouth, smilingly remarking that he was simply a fanatic. Schwartz removed her hand and added, addressing the protagonist, that in this country he couldn't even earn the well-deserved title of hero. However, if he moved to their kingdom, he could earn the title of duke or knighthood without any effort. He would certainly be rewarded and respected for his exploits. And we mustn't forget about respect at the national level. MC asked him with a grin, if he moved to their kingdom, would he promise him that he would be able to keep his heroic life? The prince exclaimed so loudly that the animals in the garden stopped grazing and looked at him in surprise. He said yes. He wouldn't have to live in such a shabby place, feed the cattle, or do household chores. Noel asked him if that was true. Schwartz answered loudly again, yes, it was. Let him think about this proposal. The protagonist answered without hesitation. Then there was no point in him moving to their kingdom. The prince was taken aback by his answer and asked, could I ask why? The protagonist told him he didn't care about the title and fame of a hero. He cared about the people here. But Schwartz was still perplexed. Why? MC replied, everyone here trusts him, and the work is worth it. That's all he needs now. He looked at Aqua and noted, everything would be different without him, right? The girl answered him, confused of course, that's true. She wouldn't forgive him if he just left. Sarah added, so would she. She wants to live with him. Noel looked at the prince and asked him, does he see it? Schwartz didn't want to accept this answer. He wanted to object. But Mitraj tugged at his sleeve and told him to take a break, to leave it to her. Gerzas noted with surprise, the sweet tooth is also from the kingdom of Schwier, of noble blood, like the prince. The prince apologized for not introducing his companion sooner and declared, this is Holy Queen Mitraj, ruler of the Holy Nation. The protagonist's allies were surprised. A Holy Queen? The highest-ranking official in the church? MC calmly asked the guests if they were concerned about anything else. The girl raised a finger for emphasis and said, yes, but this question is different. Basically, it concerns the defense of Sonia. She wants to conquer this kingdom. Gerzas, perplexed, asked her what she had just said. Mitraj explained to them, more precisely that the royal family would be exterminated, and the reason was just as Prince Schwartz had said. They had appropriated the merits of the hero chosen by the goddess, and even set their sights on his life. In a world where everyone worships the goddess, there is no greater sin. The knight spoke in confusion. Although that's true, would they really go against the king? The saint assured him that the people were currently suffering from the misfortunes inflicted by the royal family. They had raised taxes to finance the construction of the mansion, and the prince and the saint's illustrious wedding ceremony, completely disregarding the consequences for the common people. But no one dares publicly oppose Prince Cain, who is believed to have defeated the Demon King. That's why the people are offended. They're more outraged than ever. Moreover, there's a crop failure throughout the kingdom, which is adding fuel to the fire. The protagonist was surprised. Is that so? But the harvest here in the village is surprisingly excellent. Mitraj replied that it was all thanks to the goddess of the earth, a stunning woman imbued with divine spirit. Aqua felt important at these words. The saint continued, referring to the oracle the goddess had imparted, a peaceful life for the people, something this idiotic royal family had forgotten. They had lost the right to rule over others, but if the sacred nation were to start this, it would all escalate into war. It would be better to settle matters from within. Therefore, she asked Prince Schwartz for help. The prince added that they had been gathering information about the kingdom. He couldn't say it out loud, but they had found some traitors, and there were even people within the royal chambers. Schwartz exhaled and said, summing it up, that they would like him, the hero, to also take part in this revolution. MC, after some thought, replied that he agreed that the current government was incapable of uniting the kingdom. However, he would not leave the village. The prince urged him to think carefully about it. After all, this was a good opportunity to take revenge on the king who had appropriated his merits and achievements for subduing the demon king. Mitraj exclaimed that if he helped them overthrow them, not only Sonia, but he himself would be able to stop living like a recluse in this wilderness. The prince insisted that he agree. It was to restore his glory. The protagonist stood his ground. He apologized to them and firmly declared that he would not change his beliefs. No matter how much they discussed the matter, they were unlikely to understand him. However, there was something they could see. Let them simply dine with them. Noel invited them to see the village. The prince and the saint looked at him, confused. After a stroll through the settlement, the allies treated the guests to dinner, grilling vegetables. Mitraj and Schwartz savored the dish. The saint asked the protagonist in surprise, "Is this all the power of good ingredients? It's so delicious." He told her, "They can eat as much of this as they want." Suddenly, she turned to the prince and told him, "This piece is bitter. She'll leave it for him." Schwartz muttered, "Does she know she's not a child anymore?" After dinner, the prince declared, "It really is delicious." Aqua devoured the dinner with great gusto, and Sonia kept bringing her more and more. After that, Ina got up from the table and said, "Yes, it's nice to see everyone enjoying themselves and eating delicious food with smiles on their faces. That's what she likes to see." Sonia looked at her in surprise, helping Gurzas fry vegetables. The prince said to Mitraj he'd recently glanced at the granary. "The earth goddess's power isn't all that effective." The saint replied, "It's because Noel was chosen by her." He said, "There's no doubt about it. Such a wonderful dinner is unimaginable in this deserted village." The protagonist advised him to tell Sarah if he liked it. She's the one who gets them food. Mitraj asked him, "She's a demon, right? Why does she live with them?" MC said she had nowhere else to go, so he asked her to help him repair the village. Mitraj asked in surprise, "Doesn't she consider him an enemy after defeating the demon king?" Noel replied, "That's no reason to abandon her in trouble." Ina approached him, pointed at the attackers, and told him they'd promise not to tell anyone about the village. The protagonist thanked her and asked if that reassured her. The girl hesitated, then said, "Yes." He believed everything she said. "No problem." The protagonist turned to the saint and said, "Now he'll bring the meat. Can she still eat?" Mitraj answered, "Of course." Schwartz, watching them, told his companion that the reason Noel couldn't leave the village was beginning to dawn on him. Those who had recently attacked the village were now sitting and eating with them. That was strange. He could accept anyone because of their heroic endurance? The girl answered, "Of course." Regardless of position or race, it was a cozy and welcoming place for them. No matter how long a person searched, it was hard to find a place like this. Besides, since he was betrayed in the kingdom, he found the strength to build his own home, so he doesn't want to accept help from others. However, he remains a former hero and can't ignore the situation in the kingdom. Meanwhile, Sarah confronted MC about what he'd said earlier at the table. If he wanted to fight for his rightful place, could she be with him? He told her he didn't think so. He had no desire to participate in a coup d'etat. Sarah said fine. Noel added, but if it came to this village, he'd be glad if she stayed by his side. The girl happily assured him he could count on her. Although there's more to it than that. Could she be with him forever? The protagonist, perplexed, asked her, "What is she talking about?" Sarah became embarrassed and muttered, "No, nothing." After a while, Gurzas was petting his horse. The protagonist approached him and said, "Okay, that's it." The knight asked him if the Holy Queen and the prince had left, right? The protagonist replied that they had. He added that they would begin preparations for the coup as soon as they returned. Gurzas said it was difficult for him to hear this, being a knight. He also noticed, incidentally, that the anti-invasion team was nowhere to be seen. Noel replied that they had left before dawn. They probably didn't want to be noticed. Sonia asked the knight if father would fight the Holy Queen. He replied that he would not. After the attack on her, the commander would likely abandon his post. Even he would not cease to be a patriot. He should consider whether the king was worthy of his loyalty. After these words, Gurzas mounted his horse and rode away. Sonia asked the main character what would happen to their kingdom. The protagonist replied that no matter what happened, they would not change. They would build a village together and get rid of those who hindered them. They would do it all together. The girl looked into the distance and thought that even if Noel himself didn't change, everything around him would. But still, if it concerned him, it mattered to her. MC looked at her carefully and called her name. She snapped out of her thoughts and said, "Yes, it doesn't matter what happens." The girl went to the house, offering to wash the dishes because they had a lot of guests. He agreed and followed her. Sometime later, near Sonia's mansion, the protagonist met a farmer. He had no idea that the acquaintance the girl spoke of was a meeting with a farmer. The man, with a cheerful smile, told him, Although he had done him a great favor given the recent crop problems, it was very difficult to find quality goods. Next time, he would like to buy some of these wonderful vegetables too. The protagonist heard a distinctive sound and told him to wait a little longer. There was something else he wanted to offer him. At that moment, the farmer also heard the noise. Turning toward the sound, he stared in shock at the large boar, which had just let out its terrifying roar. The man, shocked and startled, fell to the ground. Before his eyes, an arrow pierced the monster, and it fell dead right in front of the farmer. Sarah appeared from behind the boar, exhaling and joyfully exclaiming that she'd chased it all the way here so she wouldn't have to drag the carcass by hand. It was good they'd met in time. The farmer stuttered in agreement. Sometime later, when MC and Sarah returned home, Noel emptied the contents of his wallet onto the table. Aina exclaimed in surprise, "Amazing. Is that all the proceeds from the vegetables?" The protagonist said, "Yes, plus the catch Sarah caught was worth 5,000 gold. Aqua dreamily mused, "So what are they buying? Snacks? Sweets?" The protagonist replied he wanted to buy seeds for the new crop. Looking at Aqua's suddenly drooping expression, he added, "We need to think about how to increase income as the village's population grows." A little later, over tea, Aina said in surprise, "Wild poppy?" Sonia answered, "Yes, it's a wild plant known as a hallucinogenic vegetable. It sells for a fortune. Apparently, it used to be grown here. Incidentally, it looks simple." Aqua said thoughtfully, "I see. So if she finds it, she can eat all the sweets she wants?" MC looked at her in surprise and said he'd looked for it in the village, but most likely overlooked it. Sarah raised her hand and asked permission to speak. She remarked that she'd found a place that interested her. It was located about halfway up the mountain. After a while, the allies set off for this place. After a long journey, Aina said, "There are harmful toxic fumes here. They seem to be emanating from the ground. To freely grow various crops, they first need to deal with this." Noel asked her if there was anything she could do about it. The girl said, "Of course, if it's that bad." She summoned the purification, activated it, and after a short while, said that everything was fine now. They could move on. Sarah said it was a magical place. It was so beautiful here that it resembled a divine abode. To think that such a wonderful place could be located so close to the toxic land. Suddenly, she exclaimed, she'd found it. She thought she saw it shimmering there. Aina noticed with surprise. She'd expected nothing less from Sarah. The girl carefully plucked the poppy and exclaimed in surprise, "The shimmer is gone, so it stops shimmering when you pick it." She asked the protagonist if it wouldn't taste as good if it didn't shimmer. He told her that it did. The protagonist turned to Aina and asked her, but she couldn't think of anything. Aina suddenly exclaimed joyfully, "She knows. She'll try it now. It seems to have worked." The girl activated her magic skill, channeling its power into the poppy, causing it to glow even brighter than before. Sarah remarked in surprise, "She could even do that." Aina added that cold magic might also be cast. MC told her that if she froze it to ice, the flavor would be lost, so she should just chill it. That would keep it fresh for a long time. He looked around and noticed there were probably more nearby. Aina asked him for permission to practice magic spells when they found another such plant, and at that moment, Sarah exclaimed, she had found it. After some time, the allies had collected much of the material they needed. Aina, falling to her knees, said, "I can't take it anymore. My energy is running low." The protagonist stroked her head and sympathetically asked her, "Is she okay?" The girl apologized. The protagonist countered, "Did she use too much mana? Let her rest for a bit. He'll go get some water if there's a river nearby." After a while, Sarah, twirling the sought-after plant in her hands, said, "Thanks to Aina's magic, the goal has been achieved for today." The girl replied, "Well, MC can cast the same spells." Sarah, surprised, asked her, "Is that true?" Aina said, "Yes, it is. He did everything himself when they subdued the Demon King." The girl added, "She always thinks he doesn't need her, but he let her do her job today." Sarah noted that she understood. She had hunted today too. He could have easily killed the monster before she even fired an arrow, but he didn't. Isn't everything built on trust? At this question, Sarah looked closely at Aina. The mage replied, "He believes in them, gives them various assignments and tasks." Sarah said thoughtfully, "Then when he rejected the Holy Queen's offer, she didn't believe him. She thought that if it was for the greater good, he should accept the offer." Did that mean he trusted Mithraj and the people of the kingdom? Did he believe and trust them too? Aina told her, "Who knows? Perhaps he simply wanted to preserve himself and the people he wanted to protect from war." Sarah, confused, suggested, "Because there were people willing to fight shoulder to shoulder with him, right?" At that moment, Noel appeared and announced that he had brought water. He noticed Sarah's flushed face and asked her if something was wrong. She answered quickly and sheepishly, no, nothing had happened. Sometime later, when everyone was home, Sonia began preparing food. After some time, the girl called everyone to the table, placed the collected poppies in front of the allies, and said she dipped them in batter and fried them. Everyone having tried this dish was delighted. Aina declared, "It's very delicious." Sarah also noted the excellent taste of the prepared dish. Aqua exclaimed, "It feels like her cheeks are melting." The protagonist sighed and said regretfully, "Oh, if only he could grow this." Sonia told him him she had heard that it was impossible. He needed pure spring water. Sarah repeated thoughtfully, "Pure water?" Aqua suddenly became sad. The protagonist asked her what was wrong. When the reason for her sadness became clear, he told her he would leave it to her. The girl happily grabbed the plant and planted it in the ground, watching it with Sonia. Sometime later, MC asked Jerzas if he would participate in the coup. The boy told him that since the general had become the army's leader, he would have to join. He couldn't do anything about it. Incidentally, the general had finally made a decision. He'd been hesitant because he was worried about Sonia's safety. Then the prince told him, what was there to worry about when she was being protected by a former hero? That was how he convinced him. The church is under the patronage of the Holy Queen, so they would most likely be on her side. However, the mage's position is still unclear. This upsets the prince. The group is quite secretive, so they've only managed to obtain a little information. At that moment, Ina approached them and told the protagonist that she would get something for him. He asked her if she was sure. The girl said that while she wasn't obligated to participate in the coup d'etat, she didn't want to turn a blind eye to it. The protagonist looked at her intently and said that he didn't care whether the coup was successful, but they needed her in the village. So let her promise him that she'll return. Ina looked at him in surprise and replied, "Okay." After saying goodbye to her allies, the brave girl set out. Aqua said sadly, "She's gone." MC, throwing the box over his back, said, "Then he'll go too." The goddess of the earth asked him in surprise where he was going. He replied that he'd gone to find more helomicon. He wanted to send it as provisions to the army. Jerzas had ordered it. He hadn't managed to gather it before it ripened. The girl asked him in surprise, "Did you give all the vegetables and the spoils Sarah had collected to Jerzas?" Noel said the knight had refused, but he assured him it didn't matter how much provisions they had. They'd need more anyway. But they'd been paid well, so they'd earned about 10,000 gold. Jerzas countered, "No, that's not true. She bought a lot of traps and tools from the farmer, so there wasn't much money left." Sonia noted, "And they'd also bought spices and kitchen utensils." Aqua remembered, hadn't they also bought seeds? The protagonist was confused, and that too? Well, if everyone can do accounting, then that's just great. Aqua immediately asked him again, did he say something about cupcakes? MC said, no, he meant accounting. Sonia said regretfully, they don't teach princesses that kind of thing. Sarah pointed out that the demon race didn't have bookkeepers or accountants either. Aqua quickly asked him, so when are they going to buy the cupcakes? At that moment, Lilia Schweer's voice rang out, saying that if it came to budgeting, she'd help them. The allies were surprised by the appearance of an unfamiliar girl in their territory. The protagonist asked her who she was. The girl extended her hand and replied, nice to meet you. She's gifted with numbers. Her name is Lilia Schweer, and her brother asked her to help them in the village. The protagonist was puzzled. Isn't her last name related to Schwartz? Lilia smiled and told him she was his younger sister, and she'd heard a lot about him from her brother. MC was confused. He was grateful for the offer, but why her? The girl replied that her brother had said they needed to stay in touch, so he chose someone as talented as she was, someone he trusted completely, to help them here. And so, here she was. She'd studied finance and taxation from an early age, so he could relax. She'd be helping them. Noel agreed to her offer and led the girl to the vault. When she saw the disordered pile of money, she was completely amazed and exclaimed in surprise, "What is this?" The protagonist, in his defense, replied that they hadn't dealt with finances before. The situation was quite complicated, but Lilia assured him that although it was complicated, everything could be resolved in an hour. Please, let him assign her another task when she was finished with this one. The protagonist couldn't believe his ears. He told her in surprise, no, even he understood that it was simply impossible. It was okay if she couldn't handle it. They wouldn't make her come back. So, she could take her time and do everything slowly, okay? Lilia looked at him in bewilderment. When he looked in on her again after a while to ask how she was doing, he was surprised to see the storage room in perfect order and Lilia asleep right at the table. The protagonist thought sympathetically, this must be so tiring. He should brew some helomicon tea for her. When she woke up, he saw the book she had slept on and asked her in surprise, is she finished yet? The girl yawned, rubbed her eyes and said, finally, he's back. Didn't she tell him she'd handle all of this quickly? Lilia slapped her hand on the book and rattled off all the receipts sorted in the ledger. Then she compared the prices of harvest goods in the village stores with the average market price. She also took into account problematic aspects and areas for improvement. She also analyzed the future trading plans. The protagonist seemed swept away by a wave of surprise. He stared at the girl in amazement, unable to believe his ears. Lilia continued, showing him her analysis. For example, in the kingdom of Schweer, the price is like this. Although they're going through a famine right now, MC said, confused. He thought they should raise the prices in that case. The girl told him the quality was too good and her brother was delighted. She would help him gradually turn all this into a whole brand. What did he think about this? If he made her his accountant, she could confidently assure him that his income would increase. Noel, looking at the stack of books in bewilderment, wondered if this was some kind of magic. He replied that there were still some concerns and nothing was yet clear regarding the revolution. Meanwhile, Gusher gave his troops a stern look. After a while, all the girls were enjoying their bath. Sonia exclaimed delightedly, "It's so nice." Sarah remarked, "Yes, it's so calming and refreshing. That's what a hot spring is." Sonia said, "Thanks to Aqua and Noel." The goddess of the earth jumped with joy and shouted, "Yes, thank her." Lilia exclaimed, "Amazing. How did she manage to create such a magnificent outdoor spring?" Aqua remained embarrassed and silent. Lilia remarked, "A simple restoration of stamina and, of course, benefits for the skin. It becomes soft and smooth. It could become a great tourist attraction." Sonia asked her in surprise, "Will tourists visit them?" Sister Schwartz replied, "She's just considering the prospects for now." She looked at Aqua, who was lying on her back, warming it up. She turned to the goddess of the earth and suggested she take care of her back. Aqua jumped up and happily asked her, "She's very perceptive, isn't she?" Lilia asked her, "By the way, what about the water here?" While they were chatting, Sonia swam up to Sarah and asked her what she thought of their new ally. Sarah replied that she was very talented. Besides, she'd helped them a lot since she took over the finances. Sonia mused. In fact, she'd recently overheard Noel and Gurzus talking about Prince Schwartz while she was serving them tea. The knight told the protagonist he didn't understand why the prince was so close to the king. He intentionally wanted to stir up trouble right in the next kingdom. MC asked him, "Isn't that the Holy Queen's order?" The boy answered that perhaps that was one of the reasons. Perhaps because he knew Noel was a hero. The protagonist looked at him, puzzled. The knight, seeing his confusion, explained that the power to defeat the Demon King was seriously hindering the kingdom's upper class. And this power, easily destroying the balance of power between nations, had gotten out of control. It was no wonder he was thinking such thoughts. The protagonist said that initially, it was Prince Cain who was passed off as the hero. Once he learned that he, Noel, was the real hero, he should have relaxed. The knight handed him a book with pictures of Stella and Cain and said that the failed prince was actually the hero who defeated the Demon King. This biography was created to show how good Prince Cain was, and everyone should buy it. MC flipped through the book and Gurzus continued. They were forced to publish such a book because everyone knew how weak Prince Cain truly was. Of course, some believed what it said. They even thought the Demon King should have been killed in a more vile and cruel manner. But still, everything in this biography is true, except the hero's name. They don't know how vigilant the other kingdoms are. Noel looked closely at the knight. Sonia fell silent, and Sarah, who had been listening intently, said, "She understands, that's the point." Lilia also came at Prince Schwartz's request. "Does she have an ulterior motive? In that case, whoever Noel accepts, she will follow him." Sonia told her, but this time it seems their hero and Lilia are going on a shopping trip. What if something happens to him? Sarah noted. "Noel is capable of anything, no matter who opposes him," Sonia exclaimed. "She's going shopping with Lilia too, because she doesn't think they can go together." Sarah asked her in confusion, "Isn't she just making this up?" But the girl was already preoccupied with the need to make sure she didn't leave any loopholes. Sarah asked her if she could even hear her. What had she told her? After a while, the girls headed off to the shops with Noel. While Sonia was looking around, Sister Schwartz pointed her in the direction they should go. The girl added that she'd carefully studied the prices in the local stores, and now she'd show her the cheapest ones. Sonia continued to turn her head from side to side, looking around. Suddenly, a bandit blocked their path and told them to wait. He told them that if they went any further, they'd be charged a fee. Lilia asked him how much. He told her 110 gold. The girl countered, saying that guys like him were greedy for easy money. 16 gold. That's a fair price, even taking into account recent inflation. The bandit told her irritably he wasn't giving discounts. She should just pay if she didn't want any trouble, although she could pay him with her body. Lilia asked him, even if they screamed loudly. The bandit smirked and called them rude, adding that no one would come here. Lilia mockingly remarked, "Do you think so?" She turned to Sonia and told her that she was counting on her. Sonia was confused. Her? But Lilia pushed her forward, ready to protect her at any moment. Sonia took a deep breath and screamed at the top of her lungs, "Someone, help them." The bandit laughed nastily and said, "Stop wasting time." At that moment, the protagonist, who had already dispatched his comrades, appeared behind the bandit and asked the girls if they were calling him. After a while, Lilia exclaimed in delight, unable to believe she'd seen Noel fight. She was so lucky. He sheepishly replied, "It's nothing." The girl continued. She understood correctly. A crowd of villains like those guys were just child's play for the former hero, right? Suddenly, she looked up at the sky and excitedly exclaimed, "A dove from his brother. Let them forgive her." She ran off, and the protagonist sat down next to Sonia and gave her a glass of water. She thanked him and asked how he knew they were in trouble. Noel answered her because he was nearby and worried about her. The girl confusedly asked him, was he worried about her? After a moment's silence, she continued. As far as she understood, he was also wondering about Lilia. Seeing his surprised look, she quickly apologized to him and explained that she had recently overheard their conversation with Gurzus. The protagonist replied that Lilia was their ally now, living in the same village with them. There was nothing to think about. Sonia fell silent, thoughtfully holding her glass. Then she said, she doesn't understand how he can trust others so easily. He'd already been betrayed in the kingdom, yet he still accepted even a demon, Sarah. She doesn't understand how to become someone like him, who truly accepts people. She's sorry, After her engagement with Cain broke off, it was hard for her to trust anyone. Since they shared the pain of betrayal, the courage to trust others is a good foundation for human bonds, and he believes in a bright future for the village, with strong friendships. Therefore, he hopes she can trust him and everyone in the village. Sonia wiped her tears and remarked, "Courage, faith in the future. It all sounds so good. And by the way, why is he worried about her?" MC looked at her carefully and said that, with revolution raging everywhere, he expected the king's army to target General Gusher's family. Therefore, he had assigned Sarah to protect her, just in case. Lilia had anticipated his actions well, based on calculations. The girl spoke up, understanding what was coming, even though she hadn't even guessed. He remarked that since he had done all this without saying a word, it seemed he and Sarah had succeeded. Sonia looked at him warmly, thanked him, and added that she hadn't doubted him. At that moment, Lilia appeared next to them, a carrier pigeon perched on her head. She apologized for keeping them waiting. Noel asked, "Did something happen?" The girl hesitated, sweating from nerves, and told him that the rebel army had lost. Sonia gasped at the news. The protagonist looked resolutely into the distance. The girl continued, "The rebels retreated before Gudall, exclaiming that he was too strong. He called them worthless rabble that were getting in the way. They'll all go straight to hell." However, the rebellion wasn't a complete failure. For the record, General Gusher remained unharmed, so Sonia could relax. Sonia sighed and said, "What a relief." When they returned home, Sarah asked them the reason for their defeat. Lilia said it seemed she had underestimated the true strength of the knight commander Gudall. Even some of the general's subordinates couldn't stand up to him. He had calmly calculated her brother's strategy. Noel had outshone Gudall during the battles against the Demon King, but the fact that he was chosen for the hero's army meant his strength was genuine. The protagonist pensively uttered the name of his comrade in arms. Lilia told him that her brother had one more request of him. MC assumed he wanted him to participate in the war. The girl objected. Not at all. He simply needed vegetables from the village, but he wanted the protagonist to deliver them personally. The protagonist was surprised. Vegetables? Of course. He wouldn't mind. He'd help. Lilia thoughtfully remarked, but this place was very close to the battlefield. She was afraid he might get injured. MC assured her it was fine. He'd do it. The girl opened a map of the area and said then, judging by her brother's instructions, he could take this detour. Sometime later, Gudall and his warriors were discussing battle strategy in the field camp. At that moment, Cain appeared next to them with his bride and exclaimed delightedly, "A stunning victory." Gudall wondered why they were here. Was there a problem? The prince answered, "No. They just wanted to visit him." But despite the victory, he seemed to be in a bad mood. Why? The knight chuckled and said, if he'd decided to spend his leisure time visiting him, why not train the court mages instead? If they'd taken part in the previous battles, they'd be celebrating victory in the capital by now. Cain replied, fine, he didn't mind. They wouldn't be arriving anytime soon, and they'd certainly take part in the next battle. Gudall said irritably. He didn't care if the mages were late, or if the church supported them. He should show more nobility as a member of the royal family. The prince replied. Therefore, he believed in him. They must defeat the remaining forces so they could unite the kingdom, and the king admired him for proving himself so brilliantly on the battlefield. Here's his reward. With these words, Cain drew his sword and noted that it was a royal heirloom. According to legend, this sword was sacrificed as a token of Velder's death to ward off an evil god. Gudall, examining the weapon, said in surprise, a historical antique? It's believed that an evil god will return if the sword is filled with blood. That doesn't sound good. Stella told him he'll receive more merits and titles if he does. Isn't that good? This time, he'll be a true hero. Gudall sheathed the sword and exclaimed smugly, be it the evil god or Gusher, he'll be another step on the path to glory. So, they need to get started. At the same time, a messenger falcon delivered a letter for Gusher and Jerzas. The general reading this said, finally, the court mages have begun to act. The man opened a map of the area and showed the knight. The mages are on the right flank. On the left is the knightly order, led by Gudall. They stand like a claw. If they are attacked, they can be completely destroyed. Jerzas asked him in bewilderment, by the way, where is Prince Schwartz? He said they need to retreat here. They don't understand his strategy. One of the knights reported to them that Prince Schwartz had gone out on patrol that morning and hadn't returned yet. Jerzas exclaimed irritably, what did he say? Perhaps Prince Schwartz or the kingdom of Schwier are trying to stab them in the back and take advantage of this opportunity? At that moment, on the main road, Gudall's detachment, which was marching ahead, suddenly stopped. The commander shouted at them, what's the delay? The knight leading the column apologized, saying that a cart was blocking their path. Gudall asked irritably, a cart? They should get it out of the way right now. The knight replied, the man driving it is a bit problematic. The commander shouted at him, what kind of idiot is he? Hasn't he forgotten that they are, after all, an army? But enough. He reined in his horse and charged forward. Riding up to the cart that had stopped them, he shouted to the driver, what is he doing here? The protagonist, driving the cart, asked him, is this Gudall? How long has it been since they last saw each other? The guy was stunned, not understanding the problem. When he saw who had called his name, he exclaimed in shock, Noel? But that's impossible. He should be dead. How could he have survived? Or better yet, Where has he been all this time? The protagonist calmly answered him. A lot had happened, but now he just grows crops and sells them. Now he's doing deliveries. Gudall wondered in confusion. Did this guy know about the plans to make Prince Cain king? And did he know they'd betrayed him? He said that he would buy these vegetables and pay double the amount for it, and he should just go home and rest there, okay? MC chuckled thoughtfully and said, double, he said, but he had to fulfill a deal made in advance. He couldn't bargain with him. Gudall thought irritably. Doesn't this idiot know his place? He shouted at him. Then he'll increase his profits tenfold. If he's so worried about the deal, he can redeliver the groceries when he gets back. Anyway, he'll buy everything he has now, okay? Let him just accept his offer and disappear already. Noel drawled. Interesting. In that case, he wants more than just money. Gudall answered, whatever he wants. Does he have what he needs on him? The protagonist said, that's true. But it would cost him dearly. He wouldn't give it back, even if he regretted it later. Gudall looked at him in confusion, wondering what was wrong with him. What an arrogant idiot. The protagonist continued, the general would love such a souvenir. The military commander realized with astonishment. What general? He was talking about Gusher? What is he his ally? MC smiled and said, it's time to give it back. Gudall broke out in a cold sweat. Give it back? What, is he talking about betrayal? So he wants to kill him? He cursed silently and thought, looking at Noel's impenetrable face. As always, it is impossible to read his intentions. But if he wanted him dead, he'd have to fight him. What if he suddenly attacked? Gudall turned his horse in the opposite direction. The protagonist watched his every move. The knight wondered, was he on guard now? He was constantly looking at his sword. He cursed because he knew he had no chance against him. In that case, he was simply a dead man. He abruptly turned his horse back and shouted to the knights, this guy is the enemy. Everyone to the front. They must survive. The knights called out to him in disbelief, but Gudall raced back, thinking he needed to escape quickly before he was the only one left alive. The knights he'd left behind looked in bewilderment, then at the protagonist. The protagonist was puzzled. Was this sword that valuable? He thought General Gusher would be pleased if he gave it to him. Although he'd already broken him once, he looked at the Gudall knights and wondered, then, what to do with them. At that moment, Amy, the court mage, said with boredom in her voice, war, and all this is very tiring. Of course, everything could be resolved through negotiations. She asked the mage, Gudall, does he mean this upstart? He ordered them, the court mages, to take action. Eliza said she'd even postponed her experiment for this. It was a complete mess. The mage told them they'd come this far. There was no point in complaining. Moreover, this was a royal order. They needed to show everyone what they were capable of. Eliza told him, no, she wanted to go home already. She needed to get this over with and hurry home. Ina asked them then, why not just forget about everything and retreat? The mages looked at her in surprise. The mage exclaimed irritably, are they idiots? He made it clear to them that this was a royal order. Amy answered him angrily, he really was a fool. Speaking of which, if we're talking about such matters, Ina can handle them alone, can't she? Even an amateur like him can do it. Eliza added, when someone like him expresses his stupid opinion, she simply can't hold back. Can you tell me why? The mage answered angrily. By the grace of the hero prince, she received the position of a mage, and she has become very insolent. Let her stop talking so arrogantly. Amy spread her arms and grumbled, a court mage chosen by the prince, what a blatant backup plan. She means, the Demon King is so weak that even he could defeat him? Eliza told her she wasn't strong enough for a court mage, and she remained imprisoned. Has she forgotten that already? It's her fault they have to expel a person to save her place. What's his name again? Amy answered her irritably. Oh no, she's simply unbearable. She'd even forgotten his name. Eliza told Ina that at the very least they're more useful than she is. The girl calmly replied, she knew it. Amy told her, so why not turn those oafs to ashes before they face the army? Ina exhaled and said, she really had been arrogant when she thought she was capable of any magic. Since she was still learning, she began to doubt her abilities and talents, but she was certain of this. It was she, not Amy, who was chosen to defeat the Demon King. The girl activated her magical power, causing the mages to be astonished. Amy exclaimed in surprise, impossible. What kind of huge magic circle was that? How could someone like Ina be capable of such a thing? The protagonist's allies shouted at them. She would no longer allow mages like them to hinder Noel. At this moment, Schwartz appeared in General Gusher's field camp, angrily shouting at them, what are they doing? Give the order to attack now. Jerzas asked him irritably where he had been. Prince replied, it doesn't matter. They needed to hurry and not let this chance go to waste. The knight said in a disgruntled tone, he says a chance? If they go on the offensive now, they'll be captured. Both Gudall's knightly army and the court mages. Schwartz adjusted his glasses and declared, Gudall won't return. Jerzas asked him in surprise, what did he mean? The prince replied, Noel dealt with them. Gudall himself had fled, and his knights lay every last one on the battlefield after their encounter with the protagonist. Schwartz smiled and added delightedly, he thought the protagonist would detain him for a short time, but clearly not like this. His power is simply unimaginable. He was glad he was able to see it with his own eyes. With such a fast and sharp sword, he could cut through anyone who dared to oppose him. This was swordsmanship on a god's level. He clearly deserved the title, even in the name of art. He wasn't exaggerating at all. At that moment, an explosion of such force sounded somewhere nearby that everything around him shook, and black smoke billowed out. Gusher wondered in surprise. What was that? The general's chief knight informed them that the explosion was connected to the court mages. This was clearly their chance. Gusher, without wasting a second, gave the order to the soldiers, everyone to the royal chambers. No one was to retreat. They must hurry and cherish time as they would their own lives. They would destroy the royal palace in an instant. All the warriors immediately set out. Gudall, meanwhile, galloped at full speed. A village appeared in the distance, which surprised him greatly. A settlement in such a place? This was exactly what he needed. He would rest here. He rushed forward, and suddenly a huge boar ran past him, arrows sticking out of its back. Gudall wondered in surprise. What could it be? Following the boar, Sarah appeared, drawing another arrow to fire. The military commander called her name in amazement. The girl stopped and looked at him in confusion. He was the last person she expected to see. He asked her why she was alive. She couldn't just remove the slave collar. Could she? Was there anyone capable of doing that? Suddenly the boy understood and exclaimed, it was Noel. So Gusher was with her too. If that's true, then the protagonist is from this village. He grinned and added that he never would have thought he'd end up in a place so closely connected to the protagonist. Gudall looked at the girl and told her that if he took her hostage, he could definitely kill him, and then he'll use all the resources of this village. Make it his fortress, so he can return here from time to time. Sarah, drawing an arrow and aiming it at him, asked if he thought she'd let him do this. She'll protect Noel and the village that's so dear to him. She fired at him, but Gudall parried her attack with a single swing. The girl thought frustratedly, her arrows gone, with just one swing. Without losing her composure, she ran to the dead boar, tossed it in the air, and launched it at her enemy. Gudall easily cut the carcass in half, shouting at her, it's all in vain. Then Sarah fired arrows at his horse, which reared and threw its rider. Gudall fell to the ground, perplexed, wondering if this was just a habit of this demonic slave girl's. At that moment, Sonia approached them and called out to her ally in surprise. Before Sarah could say anything to warn her of the danger, Gudall leaped to his feet, grabbed the girl, and held his blade to her neck, taking her hostage. He shouted at Sarah to drop her bow if she didn't want her comrade to die. Sonia shouted at the girl not to do it. A silent pause ensued. Sarah frantically tried to figure out what to do. Gudall told her it was a shame, of course, but Sonia would die anyway. They could wait until they met Noel in hell. The girl cursed, realizing her helplessness. Sonia said, if only MC had returned and seen this. The guy chuckled and said she shouldn't hope for that. He was detained by his subordinates. At that moment, an unknown man appeared next to them, and Gudall said he had found him. The evil god's body and face were hidden by a wide cloak with a deep hood. Gudall asked him in surprise, he's not one of Noel's comrades, is he? The evil god activated his magical power and aimed it at the military commander. Gudall pushed Sonia away, drew his sword, stabbed the evil god in the body, and exclaimed, you common rabble. The evil god bowed from the blow, laughed, and said, now he's done it. He opened the cloak, revealing the girl's body with a sword protruding from her chest, and shouted, his body, the spell to remove the seal with this sealing sword. Various patterns appeared across the evil god's body. Gudall muttered in confusion. What's going on here? The evil god said. With this, he can change the world. The military commander asked him, confused. What did he say? The god shouted. With no talent whatsoever, just because he was in the army to capture the Demon King, his place was taken for nothing, even though his life was given to him to search for magic. He fell to the ground and continued. That's why he should unleash the power to change this unjust world. Unleash the evil god, who will sweep away all life in his path. His body began to emit a dark aura, and his skin rotted, revealing his bones. From all this, a mighty dragon burst forth, letting out a terrifying roar. Gudall exclaimed in fear. What kind of nonsense is this? The evil god asked him. Does he know who he is? He is the one who will rule this kingdom? The dragon's roar sent Gudall falling to the ground, and his enemy began to approach him. The boy screamed in despair. No, he doesn't want to die. He's not king yet. The dragon opened its enormous mouth wide and swallowed Gudall, armor and all. Sarah and Sonia, a safe distance away, were surprised. An evil god? What on earth was going on? The dragon reared up on its hind legs and let out its terrifying roar again, like a cry of victory. Its roar darkened everything around it. Black thunderclouds appeared in the sky and lightning flashed. Aqua, tending the animals at that moment, looked at the blackened sky in horror and exclaimed in bewilderment, what's going on? This looks terrible. The king's army was also stunned by what was happening. They couldn't understand what had happened. It was simply disgusting. All the villagers were perplexed by what was happening. Meanwhile, Mitraj, in the church, spoke warily. This is an ominous premonition. This is a disaster comparable to the Demon King, or rather, even worse. She ordered her subordinates to gather the bishops or high-ranking clergy immediately. She pondered this intensely. Even if they gathered all the clergy, at best, they would only be able to contain the disaster in one place. Perhaps they should appeal to other countries for help? No, they wouldn't have time. The girl prayed to her goddess to hear her prayer. The evil god has been resurrected. Please let her lend her power and perform a divine blessing. After her prayer, the summoned goddess appeared in the air and told Mitraj that her power was not needed here. A helping hand had already been extended to the enemy. The Holy Queen looked at the goddess in bewilderment. Meanwhile, Sarah, supporting the weakened Sonia, was frantically thinking, looking at the dragon, which was growing larger and larger. Had it absorbed all the energy in the area? She knew they needed to run, but she couldn't move. She looked at Sonia and thought, she should at least help this girl. She was a good match for Noel. At that moment, the protagonist appeared next to them and apologized for keeping them waiting. Sarah looked at him with surprise and hope. The evil god in dragon form, seeing the protagonist, roared with renewed vigor and charged, spewing monstrous fire from its mouth. MC was prepared for the blow, so deftly turning, he struck it with just one blow, severing its head. In an instant, the evil god was finished. When the allies returned home, they saw Aqua sitting on the ground, covering her ears. Noel asked her if she was okay. The girl looked at them in confusion and asked, "Why is he here?" And Sarah, and Sonia. She had a strange premonition. But everything worked out, right? The protagonist laughed and told her they were no longer in danger. At this time, Gusher and his army, along with Gudall, attacked the capital, the king's palace. Fighting the royal knights, the boy shouted to the general, "Let him go. He was capable of holding off the enemy here." Gusher answered him, "Okay," and rushed forward. He burst into the throne room, where the monarch sat. The king's aide indignantly shouted at the general, "He's so reckless. Does he even know what this place is?" Gusher declared that if the right person were on the throne, they would have no reason to rebel. Unfortunately, things are different. He looked the king straight in the eyes and declared, this is the end for him. After that, going out onto the balcony, Gusher shouted, "Finally, it's all over. Glory to Lavania." The residents rejoiced in response, wishing health and long life to General Gusher. Prosperity to Lavania. At this time, Sarah and the protagonist were walking down the street. She asked, "What about the legal case?" Noel answered that when they overthrew the royal family, their sins were announced throughout the world. They need this to convince the people of their country and other states. Therefore, they will have to officially accuse them in court. She was worried, but will the king give in so easily? He doesn't know. They also remembered the punishment of the saint, Stella. Then she clung to the bars and didn't understand. How did it come to this? The victory parade in honor of the destruction of the Demon King and her wedding ceremony with Prince Cain. Didn't everyone only wish them happiness? Mitraz and MC entered her room and she said, did she listen to other people's opinions? The speeches she was referring to weren't congratulations, but cries of despair. Stella turned around in shock upon hearing the Holy Queen. She was even more shocked to discover Noel was alive. Mitraj announced that they had come to pronounce her sentence. Stella broke out in a cold sweat. But why? As she said, she defeated the Demon King. Noel, wasn't that right? Mitraj immediately asked, wasn't this done by just one hero? They had dumped all their responsibilities on his shoulders and stopped halfway. Stella began to cover herself up by saying it was an order from Gudall, but the queen didn't believe her. But what about complicity in the crime of counterfeiting a true hero? Was that also his order? Without waiting for an answer, she approached Stella and extended her hand. From now on, it would be a grave sin for her to call herself a saint. With her magic, she erased the mark from her head. Stella clutched her head and said in bewilderment, "No, this can't be. The holy powers, they're hers." Mitraj objected. They were never hers. She borrowed them from the goddess to help the hero. She would pay for her sin and the plot against the goddess in the capital's monastery forever. The girl couldn't believe it. She turned to the protagonist and asked him, will everyone know that he's the hero of the kingdom now, right? She's carrying a child. She can't stand such a life. Please, let him save her. She's practically begging him. The protagonist calmly replied that if she sincerely wanted to change, she could return to their hometown anytime. The village was still under construction. It was quite shabby, and there weren't many residents. But if she wanted to start over, he thought it would be a good option for her. Stella countered, no, she doesn't want to. There's nothing in this village. If she settles in such a remote place, she'll become a country bumpkin. She won't be able to stand it. Mitraz insistently told her she'll have a child, raise it, and learn to be human again. This is the punishment she's meted out. The girl burst into tears and asked what will happen to Prince Cain. The Holy Queen told her he'll work in the mine, where all the guilty are sent. From that moment on, the chance of them meeting again is 0. Stella repeated the word guilty. Sometime later, when Sarah came for the protagonist and he told her everything, she remarked, so that's how it all happened. It didn't end well for her. But at the monastery, she'll be able to care for her child peacefully, without worries or cares. MC agreed with her. The allies calmly headed for the exit.